When I was 16 in the mid-90s, aka the I know everything, I'm invincible and you can't stop me age, I got into a fight with an acquaintance while a whole bunch of us were hanging out at his house. Stupid fight. Can't remember what about. But I decided, fuck it, I'm going home. I lived about 5 miles away, but I didn't have a car. And since it was 2 AM, there were no buses. I was going to have to walk home in the middle of the night through a not as safe as it seems neighbourhood as a tiny 16-year-old girl. So I did. I think, in hindsight, my friends either didn't believe I was going to do it, or were too startled by my sudden argument to realise what I was doing. I left the house and started hoofing it. About a mile out, the suburban housing neighbourhood melted into a main street with highway access. I started to notice a greyish minivan following me. It would follow me, pass me, turn a corner, and about 3 blocks later would do the same thing again. I mean, really obvious what it was doing. I crossed over to the other side of the street, so I was walking the opposite of traffic flow, and thus no car could come up behind me. It kept doing it though, on the other side of the street. About a mile later, there was a 24-hour Fred Meyer, lights bright but parking lot empty-ish. I immediately crossed the parking lot and went to head inside. Just before I got to the doors, the minivan that had been following me pulled up into one of the parking spots. Shit. A guy called out from the driver's side and said, "I don't want you to walk over here, just stay there and listen. I just wanted to let you know what I was doing back there. I saw you walking a while back, but I also saw a dark car that was following you. A couple of times you went to turn around or stopped, so it started following you down a parallel side street. When I saw what was happening, I started following you both, just to make sure you were safe. Go inside the store and call someone to pick you up, please. I haven't seen the car since you headed across the lot." He waited until I was inside the store and then pulled away. I didn't have anyone to call, so I just let the night cashier know what was going on and hung out with her for about an hour and a half. Then I finished the walk home. I've never forgotten the incident, or that man, whoever he was. During the walk, I never saw the dark car he mentioned, but I've always been convinced he saved my life that night. I used to work as a 911 operator in a relatively large metro area. One night, at about 3 in the morning or so, I answered a call from an elderly woman who said she didn't feel good. I tried to get more information about what was wrong. Chest pain, trouble breathing, headache, is she a diabetic, and so on. She gave me her address and phone number, and said no one else was home, but that the front door was unlocked so they could come right in. I toned the call out as general illness, and kept trying to get more details. No matter what else I asked about what was wrong, all she would say was, "I just don't feel good. Can you send someone to help me?" After a few minutes, she said, "I'm gonna put the phone down for a minute. I need to go to the bathroom." I tried to get her to stay on the line with me, told her she could do whatever she needs to do to get ready, but I'd like to be able to stay in contact in case there's a problem. She said, "I'm gonna put the phone down. I'll just be a minute." And that was it. I stayed on the line and asked for her every so often, but got no reply. A couple more minutes passed, and then the fire department called on scene, so I just disconnected and didn't think much more about it. Told them that the caller advised the front door was unlocked and that she was in the bathroom. A couple more minutes, and one of the firefighters called over the air with a weird tone. "Dispatch, how exactly was this call received? I told them the call was first party from the patient's home phone, approximately 8 minutes ago. He didn't respond over the air, but called the desk from his cell phone, which usually only happens when something's going on that they don't want broadcasted, since anyone can listen in on the radios. On the phone, he said, "Are you sure this wasn't a third-party call from a family member or something?" "Negative. Caller advised I don't feel good, and said no one else was home. So, to the best of my knowledge, the caller is the patient. Have you made contact?" "Yeah. She was in the bathroom like you said, but she's probably been dead for around 12 hours. Cold to the touch, fully livid, full rigor. We're gonna need a deputy out here." Afterwards, we pulled the tapes of the radio and phone calls, checked the timestamps, address, phone number, went over everything a few times to see if we'd missed something. I called them back in the morning after the shift to see if they had any more information, but they were just as weirded out as we were. The phone was still in the living room, and the patient was dead in the bathroom. As a kid, I liked to sit on my little mini playground, as I like to call it, and read. I actually look back on this and laugh, as now I'm a lot more isolated and a more indoorsy person. My dad got home around 6, so my mum took us to and from school. This particular day, when my mum was parking her car, she pointed out a creepy guy in a car in front of hers, just looking at us. She ushered us inside and brushed it up to just being a weird coincidence or something like that. I was outside on my mini playground reading, and my mum was keeping a close eye on me from the kitchen window. For whatever reason, she had to do something and left that spot. From the top of the platform I was on, next to the slide, I heard a man say something. I don't remember what it was, but it was something along the lines of, "Hey kiddo, I have some Goosebumps books in my car if you want to come and read them with me." My mum and dad had drilled stranger danger into my head, and I was a pretty smart kid for my age, so I tried to tell the guy off myself. I know, stupid decision, but I thought I could handle it. I was wrong. The guy kept insisting that I come and read with him, and I kept saying no. Eventually, he pretended to get a phone call and claimed it was from my mum. He told me that she said to get in his car and he'll take me to the bookstore. Well, I knew she was inside, and that there was no reason for her to ask someone to take me somewhere, so I just ignored him. He then got out of his car and began to approach me. This was before we got a fence, so I was out in the open. He grabbed a hold of my arm and started dragging me towards his car. Just as we got to it, as if God himself gave me a miracle, a police car happened to come down the road and saw what he was doing. The guy let go of me and sped off, and the officer chased and eventually caught him. My mum came rushing out when she heard the sirens and comforted me. The guy claimed to be my dad, and that my mum was abusing me, but the officer knew my family well and called his bluff. I'm seriously glad that officer appeared when he did. I can't explain it in any other way than a miracle. This happened when I was 11 years old, and my friend Casey was sleeping over at my house. One thing to note is that I have sleep apnea, which will usually bother anybody sleeping over, but Casey was a very heavy sleeper, and I doubt even a bomb would have woken her. Anyway, at around 11 PM, we both decided to call it a night. I have a futon leaning against my bed, so one side is against the wall, and the other has the futon on it. I remember not knowing what time it was, so I used my hand to scan the floor for my phone. When I found it, I turned it on, but the screen was so bright I had to turn it away from my face. The light on the phone illuminated the room, and with that, I saw a tall, skinny woman in her late 50s, with long, white hair, leaning over the bed, looking at Casey. I, of course, screamed, and the woman ran. The way my house works is that my mum's room was right next to the stairs, and you had to go through my brother's room to get to the stairs. When my brother hears me screaming bloody murder, he immediately awoke to see the woman running out of my room. My mum opened her door, and my dog came rushing in front of her to attack the intruder. My dog isn't a German Shepherd or any kind of attack dog, he's a yellow lab. But if it comes to it, he'll defend us with his life. He bit the woman's ankle, and my brother pinned her to the ground, and my mum and I called the police. I woke Casey up, but we didn't leave the room. When they finally arrived, they took her away. Later, we found out she had a serious case of dementia. I felt bad, but at the same time, I can't describe in text or words how afraid I was for my life and Casey's. A few days later, I was cleaning my room. When I moved the bed to clean under it, I found multiple food wrappers and juice boxes. This has haunted me for a long time. I was about 19 or 20 at the time, and I was living in Savannah, Georgia. I had a crappy fake ID, and I drank a lot. I worked this terrible job as a grunt labourer, the kind where you go to those temp labour agencies like AbleBody or Labour Finders. I'd show up at 4 AM, work until 5 PM, and drink myself to sleep after only taking home maybe $60 for the day. I was supposed to go into work this particular morning, but I decided to skip it. It's a labour agency, they'll just find somebody else. I call my girlfriend and tell her I want to go to Tybee Beach. I had already started drinking. She comes over and we hop in my big ugly van, pack up some rods and head to the beach. I decided to have a drink across from the beach at this little bar. This is where the story gets interesting. Shortly after ordering my drink, I get this really weird feeling. I become hyper-aware of my surroundings. The door opens, and I see this guy walk in out of my peripheral vision. There was a seat between me and my girlfriend, but it was like 9 AM, and the bar was completely empty. He could have sat anywhere else, yet he chooses to sit right between her and I. Then he starts doing this thing with his fingers. The bar top was reflective, and he takes his fingers like two little legs and just starts walking with them, skating them on the top of the counter. This isn't something out of the ordinary, but I took notice because when I was in school, I did that all the time. I pretended I had rollerblades on my fingers and that I was skating around my desk. I hated school and was always distracting myself. So I'm watching him do this, and I became kind of mesmerized for some reason. That's when he looks at me, and in this really thick, kind of Germanic or Nordic accent, he says, "I notice you're a man who pays attention to details. Me too." Now, before I continue, I have to describe this guy. He had this short, spiky hair with bleached tips, kind of like a late 90s style. He had really expensive clothes on. A nice Prada leather jacket, nice designer jeans, really nice boots. He seemed like a kind of gay guy with really awesome fashion sense and really distinctive taste. I always remember this, because I think to myself, some weird homeless crazy guy couldn't afford clothes like that. The other thing that stuck out were his eyes. They were piercing grey. It reminded me of a husky's eyes, but his pupils just stayed this disturbing pinpoint size. They were just extremely small, which caused his look to be kind of terrifying. His teeth were normal, right? But not at the same time. I don't know how to explain it. They were sharper than they should be, as if they had been filed slightly. His hands were normal, but his fingernails were slightly long and pointed, as if he deliberately did it. He kept licking his teeth too, as if he were salivating. The thing about this guy is that you look at him, and everything seems normal, but off at the same time, so you're left questioning if you're crazy for thinking this. This guy then begins to start talking about the relationship between me and my girlfriend, but really strangely. He's talking about how beautiful she is, and how I should pay her more attention. Admittedly, I was kind of a dick to her. Shortly after he began talking like this, I had this almost knowing feeling come over me, like I knew this guy wasn't human. I look at my girlfriend and say, "You need to leave." She just kind of looks at me like she knows too. Without a word of protest, she gets up quietly and leaves. Later I learned that she went next door to get a coffee. That's when this guy literally says to me with the utmost confidence, "You were supposed to go fishing today." He points at the beach across the street. "If you had, I would have drowned you in that ocean." And I shit you not, he fucking hissed at me. Again, for some reason, this overwhelming calm had come over me. I just ask, "Who are you?" He answers back with this crazy, guttural language. It sounded Arabic or Hebrew or something. For some reason, without skipping a beat, and I have no idea why I was so calm to this day, I just ask, say it in a way I can understand. You can call me Jimmy C. I jumped off the San Francisco Bridge years ago, and we've been watching you. From there on out, he never referred to himself as me or I, only we. The conversation became something very strange after this. He kept buying me drinks too, specifically whiskey sours. It was like he had an endless supply of money. He smoked Marlboro ultra-light cigarettes. After I don't know how long, because I lost sense of time, I told him I'm going to leave. I walk next door to get my girlfriend, and she's stone silent. We start driving home, don't say a word. Then I just ask her, "Do you know what that was?" Yeah, that was a demon. This girl had parents that were scientists. She was really analytical, completely non-religious, and that was the first thing out of her mouth. Now, I didn't say this part before, because to me, this is the most important aspect of the story, because it's what happened after this that really screwed me up for fucking years. The last thing this Jimmy C guy said to me before I left is this. "Look at my car." I look outside and see one of those newer Volkswagen Beetles. It was white. "What does the license plate say?" I look at the plate and it literally says, "Fierce." He looks me dead in the eyes and says, "The next time you see me, I'll be driving a black Mercedes, and the license plate will say Utopia." Stupid, right? That night, I was still calm. I don't know why. I felt like that guy on Office Space after his hypnotherapist died right in front of him, and he was weirdly zen. My girlfriend started having terrible nightmares of this guy's head just staring at her in her dreams. Weeks went by, and that's when the encounter started affecting me. I found myself becoming paranoid about that black fucking Mercedes. Every black car I saw, I checked if it was a Mercedes. If it was, I immediately looked at the license plate. I started doing it when I was watching TV or movies as well. Now, I'm gonna fast forward a bit. About 10 years go by. I'm 29, so this is just recently. When I'm alone, when I'm drinking, I often think about this encounter. I still look at black Mercedes every time they pass, but I'm not so much anxious anymore, but curious. I remembered that my girlfriend at the time always kept a journal. By now, I'm pretty sure I'm insane. Maybe I was drunk. Maybe I'm not remembering any of this correctly. After years of trying to find news articles of a Jimmy C that committed suicide off the San Francisco Bridge, years of looking at black cars and so on, I felt like I'd grown out of it, so to speak. Yet still, I had to know. So, last year, I tracked down my ex-girlfriend. We ended on bad terms. I find out she's a schoolteacher in Wisconsin, has married a woman, and is actually trying to have a child. I figure she's not gonna talk to me, but I send her a Facebook message anyway. I ask her if she could find the journal from that day, because I have to know if her events line up with mine. Sure enough, she had it. It verified everything I remembered, and it contained even more details than I recalled, because she had written it at that coffee shop right after it happened. When I read what she had written, literally that day, I knew I wasn't imagining the details wrong, that this actually happened. This is probably the single most frustrating and scary thing that has ever happened to me. I want to imagine it's just a normal, crazy guy, but unless you saw it, felt it, and heard him talk about all of the little details of what you were supposed to do on that day, when only you knew it, you just can't understand the impact of it. It's been 10 years, and my only solace really is that my ex-girlfriend was there to corroborate. That communication, where I reached out to her, actually caused us to be on good terms again after a decade. It seems to have been something that bothered her just as much as it bothered me. And still, to this day, even though I'm living 10,000 miles away in Southeast Asia, I can't stop thinking about Jimmy C's twisted face. I wonder if he still crawls on my back, and if the fear I feel at night, often to where I have to drink myself to sleep or find a one-night stand just to not feel alone, is him. Or them, watching me. I was 15 years old. I'd just got home from work, so I went to my bedroom to change out of my work clothes and get ready for bed. I'm in the middle of undressing when I look to my bedroom window to catch my reflection. And I see a man's face. I dropped to the floor and turned off the lights, scrambling to get dressed, still watching the window. The face is gone, but I'm still watching. Then, a fucking camera. No face, just a camera at the window, pointed at me on the floor. I bolt from my room and tell my mum and brother. My brother went outside, and our ladder from our backyard was lying there, but nobody was around. Couldn't sleep for a year after that. Haven't thought about that in years. I was around 11 years old, and I woke up in the middle of the night to a man standing over the top of me with his hand over my mouth and nose. He told me to roll over and not to scream. I rolled onto the floor and tried to scream bloody murder. I say tried, because when you're truly terrified, it can take a second to find your voice. My mum heard me screaming and came in and fought with this guy. He was at least 6 foot, and she was only 5'3". Either way, she scared him enough with the fighting and screaming that he took off out of the window he'd come in through. Never did catch him. This didn't happen to me, but to my sister. Her husband and her had just had a baby a few months prior, and my sister was staying home, taking care of my nephew. Around 2 AM, she heard a loud knocking on her back door. She went to go check on it, and saw a lady outside, banging on the door and asking my sister to let her in. The lady told my sister that her husband had just beat her up down the street and was now looking for her. My sister was of course hesitant to let her in, since she had a newborn baby in the house and didn't want to interfere. She told the lady that the best she could do was call the police for her. The lady told my sister not to call the police and to let her in. This is where my sister got suspicious. She went to get her phone and called 911. When she went back to the door, the lady was gone. The police arrived a few minutes later and told my sister the same situation happened a few streets down. Apparently, the couple would use this act to get into people's homes. I'm sure this is very common, but having it almost happen to my sister and my nephew just creeps me out. Some real Clockwork Orange shit. One night, about 2 years ago, me and 2 of my girlfriends were driving home from getting Mexican food. We saw red and blue lights flashing behind us, and obviously assumed it was the police. Amy, who was driving, didn't feel safe pulling over where we were, considering it was the middle of the night, and the street we were on and the ones nearby had no streetlights, so we slowed down but continued on. Ashley, the other girl, came to the conclusion that it couldn't be a real police car behind us, because it looked like some shitty old small car. The car then started to speed up and passed us in the opposite lane. We then decided to call 911. The dispatcher confirmed there were no squad cars near our current location. She told us to stay on the phone and someone was coming to us right away. That car tried cutting us off and passing us again. Finally, a real police car came. We pulled over, but the other car sped off and was chased by the real police. We never found out what happened or who they were. Just goes to show, if you're ever in a situation where you aren't comfortable pulling over, you definitely shouldn't. Hey guys, Lazy here, and thank you very much for listening. Sorry this video's a little late, just missed Halloween. No! Well, they don't call me lazy for nothing, I guess. Anyway, I hope you all had a great Halloween, and if you have any pictures of your costumes, be sure to send them to me over Twitter. I'd really love to check them out and see what you guys went as. But anyway, I've been having a problem recently, and a lot of you have been telling me that you don't get notified whenever I upload anymore, or that YouTube's just plain unsubscribed you without even notifying you. I think the site's made a few changes without telling anyone, or I don't know, maybe they did tell everyone, I just didn't listen. So if you want to be sure that you get notified about all of my videos, make sure to click on that button down below that looks like a bell, right next to the subscribe button. While you're down there, be sure to smash that like button or I'll smash you, and I'll be back with another video very, very soon. Until then guys, you stay spooky, and remember, The best things happen in the dark.